Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Carving It Up 2023-2024 NBA Tip-Off Show. As always, I am Bryson Carver, back with you on the dawn of a new NBA season. Very, very exciting. Obviously, you guys know usually the show is Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 6 Eastern, 3 Pacific. This show is supposed to be at 5, but was dealing with some Wi-Fi issues, Wi-Fi connection issues, so had to postpone it about 30 minutes, but we're ready to go. Wi-Fi is ready to go, and the NBA season's ready to go in just 2 hours from now. So we are this close to another full season of NBA basketball. By the way, wasn't going to discuss this a ton, but this could be the first in-season tournament season in the NBA, which could be very, very interesting. Hopefully, reducing tanking a little bit, at least early season tanking from some teams out there. I'm looking at you, Detroit Pistons, but adding a sense of urgency to the NBA regular season, which has been so desperately needed, I think will be interesting. But I'll get into my picks for the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference in terms of the standings, 1 through 15, who's in the playoffs, who's in the play-in tournament, who to get into the playoffs, and ultimately who misses out entirely and who's back in the draft lottery. Western Conference, Eastern Conference. Also, award predictions. So MVP, Coach of the Year, Rookie of the Year, Most Improved Player, all the awards. Yours truly will predict them a little later on the show. And at the end, listen, at the end of the day, all that matters is who wins the championship. And let's be honest. I mean, I think there's a streak. I forgot what it was. I think it's since 2019, the team with the best record in the NBA has failed to get to the finals. And then I think the last 3 years, the team with the best record, or last 4 years, I think, the team with the best record has failed to get to the conference finals. So regular season doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It helps you with seeding maybe a little bit, but postseason is what matters at the end of the day. I'll get into that later on today's show. So we've got a loaded show on tap. First, I did want to start, though, before I get into any standings predictions, I did want to talk about Giannis Antetokounmpo. So the news broke during yesterday's episode of Carving It Up Live that he had signed a 3-year, $186 million extension with the Milwaukee Bucks. And this ultimately validates what I've been saying about Giannis for about a month and a half. That you notice all offseason, and it's been a long one. It's the longest Bucks offseason I can remember, given the fact that they went out unceremoniously in the first round against the 8 Miami Heat, who, in Milwaukee's defense, they did lose to the finals runner-up, but still Milwaukee should have won that series. They were certainly the more talented team when it was all said and done. However, all offseason long, you heard Giannis talking about, hey, I'm in it to win it, so to speak. And if the Milwaukee Bucks don't show me that their mindset is on winning a championship and competing at the highest level, then simply put, I'm going to leave in all likelihood in free agency in 2025. And he said that outright. He said, if Milwaukee's not in on winning, then I'm out of here. And Milwaukee's like, okay, this is our best player since Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Let's get him somebody. And they got him Damian Lillard. And as they say, history often repeats itself. Because ironically, following a gentleman's sweep to the Miami Heat, who went on to lose the finals, Giannis, who won MVP that season in 2020, the bubble year, the COVID year, comes out and is very tentative, very hesitant to sign that extension with the Milwaukee Bucks. And I'm sure I had conversations within the building saying that I'm not staying if y'all don't give me somebody. And they trade for Drew Holiday. And Milwaukee wins the championship. But even before the championship, what happens before that season? 1 month after the Drew Holiday trade, Giannis signs the extension to stay a Milwaukee Buck for the future, for the next few years, rather. Puts the Bucks in the same position. In Milwaukee, we know, good as they are still a small market team. The only way for them to acquire superstars is either to draft them, which is incredibly difficult to do, and obviously trade for them, which you give up a lot of assets. In doing so, they happen to give up Drew Holiday in that trade, Grayson Allen, other players, in order to get Damian Lillard to Milwaukee. And Giannis signs the extension yesterday. And what I love, and my man John Rivera, I'm going to have to give him credit because he commented this on my show yesterday when I was talking about this, is that this contract for Giannis really lines up with Dame's contract. So Giannis has the rest of this year. Whether he'll opt into the year following this year, to me, is borderline irrelevant, given the fact that he's already signed this extension. But Giannis is in Milwaukee for the long haul. Dame's in Milwaukee for the long haul as well. And those two are going to compete for multiple championships. Obviously, I think certainly Bucks fans would agree with this. I think NBA fans would agree that as good as that team is and as great as that duo is, I think it's the second best duo in basketball to Jokic and Jamal Murray. Only reason I put Jokic and Murray above them, I don't think Murray's better than Dame, but we've seen them do it in the playoffs. We've seen them be very successful in the past. I think you're kind of in the mindset where you're like, hey, if you're the Milwaukee Bucks, at some point, like, when are we going to break through and potentially be the next dynasty? Because let's be honest, the Golden State Dynasty, my Warriors, we've probably only got another 2-3 years left. And can Milwaukee break through, stop the dynasty short, and start their own? They've already got one, which they won 2 years ago, or technically 3 seasons ago in the 2020 through 21 season, which they beat the Phoenix Suns to do so. But man, good for Giannis. He got his money. He's going to make an average of $62 million a year. He could have made more than this, but what I love, what this message to me sends about Giannis is Milwaukee Bucks are saying, hey, Giannis, we kept our end of the deal. We showed you we're about winning. And Giannis is like, I bet you are about winning. Where's the dotted line? Let me sign here. And so he's all in the Milwaukee Bucks. Bucks obviously are all in on him. And obviously they're going to compete for a championship this year and be one of the contenders in the Eastern Conference. I'll predict their season coming up relatively soon. Also, I did want to get into, because this is the elephant of the room in the room of the NBA season, again, staying in the Eastern Conference, is James Harden. Now, this has been part 3 of the James Harden quitting on teams experiment. 2020 in Houston, 2022 in Brooklyn, which Brooklyn I defend him a little bit, but still quit his way out of Brooklyn. And now you could argue even worse than it was in Houston, because at least in Houston, hey, he was there for what it was there for 8 years, got him to some Western Conference Finals, never broke through and won a championship. So you can't call it a resounding success by any stretch of the imagination. But Houston was always competitive. James was winning an MVP and winning scoring titles, assist titles. He was very successful there. And it got to a point where both sides needed to move on. James was incredibly unprofessional with how he handled it. Let's just say he put on a couple LBs in doing so, but both sides needed to move on. This case, it's a little different. So first of all, James in his 2 playoff series with the Philadelphia 76ers has had 2 clunkers. In Game 6 last year against the Miami Heat, and in Game 7 against the Boston Celtics, and had a bad Game 6 the game before that. And we talk about James Harden, we talk about, okay, he's one of the better scorers in the history of the game. I don't think he's top 5. I'm not quite sure he's top 10, but he's certainly in that upper echelon, that tier 2, tier 3 area of scores in the history of the game. You could argue is a little gimmicky, right? Like the step back and getting to the free throw line 1,000 times a game. But listen, it worked for a long time until they changed the rules. And thus far, James hasn't really been able to adapt. And we know physical play has seemed to give him problems throughout the playoffs, given that the refs obviously are going to call it much tighter in the regular season than they are in the playoffs. Playoffs, they let you go. So for James, first of all, I think, listen, he's obviously a declining player. You look at his stat line every year. I mean, listen, last year he still was a 20-10 guy. He's still capable of doing that on a night-to-night basis. He's still capable, which we saw in the playoffs against Boston, of, he had a 40-point game in there. Hit 2 game-winning shots in that series. But then year in and year out, I'm not even going to waste y'all's time and just go through the playoffs after playoffs after playoffs that he's gagged. I'm not going to do that to James. Not going to do that to you, the audience. I don't want to bore anybody here today on the eve of the dawn of this new NBA season. But his resume speaks for itself in that regard. And I'm worried for James Harden's sake that he could become the next Carmelo Anthony, Allen Iverson, what Russell Westbrook nearly gave into until he sort of pulled back and kind of accepted his role with the Clippers. Although I think he'll be more of an empowered role, more on the Clippers later on the show. If James is, first of all, the Clippers, let's think about this. Clippers could have James Harden if they wanted. All they'd have to give up is a kid by the name of Terrence Mann. It's all I need to give up to give, and obviously some first-round picks, but for the Clippers, picks are relevant to them. Okay, 19-year-olds are not going to help them in competing for championships. Right now, they're trying to capitalize on what I think is already a shut window, a slammed shut window, but they believe it's still open with Kawhi Leonard, Paul George to try and compete for multiple championships. Good for them. Would it hurt to add James Harden? Probably not. Give up Terrence Mann in the process? But they're not even willing to do that. So what does that tell James Harden, or what should it tell James Harden, rather, that, you know what, the jury's kind of out, like, where am I at this stage of my career where teams that are trying to contend for championships are not willing to give up a role player for me? This isn't a situation where it's Paul George for James Harden. No. The 5th or 6th or 7th best player on the Los Angeles Clippers like, we'll pass. We'll keep him instead of James. Folks, if that's not a wake-up call for Harden, I'm not quite sure what is. I'm really not. So he could find himself. Remember, Allen Iverson got to a point where I'm not coming off the bench, I'm not coming off the bench. And I love Allen Iverson, love AI, but it kind of derailed his career and it didn't end too well. Carmelo Anthony was out of the NBA because he refused to come off the bench. Now, Harden, to me, is in a better spot in his career now from a production standpoint than both AI and Melo were at their stages in their career. Now, obviously, Melo came back and was a very good player, come off the bench for Portland for years. But we're getting to a point where it's not just, oh, he doesn't show up in the playoffs. Oh, he doesn't play defense. Is he really that committed to winning? Because I'm not going to lie, y'all, I don't know if I've ever seen an exhibition by an athlete in unprofessionalism in any league the way James Harden has done the last 3 years. I don't love Philadelphia this year. Didn't buy them as a contender going into the playoffs last year because I didn't trust James, Doc, or Embiid, and all three came to let me down. They moved on from Doc, and Doc's now with ESPN. So you have that aspect of it too. So this whole James Harden situation seems to get uglier by the day. Now, I will have to say this from the personal aspect of this because you guys know I don't ever, anything I ever say that's critical of athletes or anybody out there is never in a personal attack. It's never, I don't like them as a human being. I mean, there's the rare instances of the Antonio Browns of the world. Like, I don't like AB. I don't know if anybody likes AB, but AB. There's instances. I don't dislike James Harden as a human being. So the reason I'm saying that is he's away from the Sixers right now. Reportedly, he is taking care of his ill mother. I don't know who came out with that. Was it Shams? I don't want to falsely quote anybody here, but James Harden, I did read a report not too long before we started the show today that he's with his mother right now, who's dealing with some kind of undisclosed illness. This is according to Scoop Robertson. That's what he says. It says his Harden's return is uncertain because he's tending to his mom who's ill, I'm told. So, okay, so he's away from the team right now. I do think this whole, is James Harden ever going to play again for the Sixers? What other choices does he have? If the Clippers won't give up Terrence Mann for him, he's got to play for the Sixers. If he takes this whole year off, now whatever market he did have, and it doesn't look like there's any right now, absolutely nosedives even further, than it already has. So this just gets ugly and ugly. Another guard every 2 years. You got guards quitting their way out of Philadelphia. It's unbelievable. And now you got reports that Joel Embiid wants to go to the Knicks. Not a good day for Philadelphia. It's not. Okay, I know the Phillies play Game 7 tonight. I think Philly's going to win Game 7, by the way, not to get into baseball too much, but this could be a bad couple of months for Philadelphia sports fans, and I got to say, love every second of it. Love every second of it. I'm telling you. All right, let's stop messing around, okay? By the way, everybody, feel free to chime in the comment section. Make your thoughts known on the NBA season, big storylines that you guys are looking forward to. What you think of my predictions, what your predictions look like in terms of just, it could be whatever. Who's the 1 seed, or who's the surprise team in the NBA, or who's the MVP, or who wins the NBA championship. Like, comment, let me know what y'all are thinking. More than happy to put your comment up here and see what everybody out there has to say. But without further ado, let's look first at the Eastern Conference. I'll go ahead and remove this banner real quick. Let's look at the Eastern Conference in the NBA this year. So we go in sort of tiers to a certain extent, where I start with the worst teams, the teams that aren't even going to make the play-in tournament. They need to be looking at the lottery and looking to rebuild their team. Then the next 4 teams, which are the play-in teams, look at them like kind of fringe playoff teams, need to win a couple of games, or maybe 1 game if you're a 7 or 8 seed to get in the playoffs. Then there's, I think, 3 after that, the teams that are like sort of fringe contenders, like watch out for this team, better than a play-in team, but we don't necessarily view them in the upper echelon of contenders. And then the top 3 we view as serious threats to win this year's NBA title. So let's start with the Eastern Conference at the bottom of the Eastern Conference, starting at number 15, the Washington Wizards. I think we'll finish at the bottom of the conference. Listen, Washington is going to have plenty of scoring. Okay, they've got Jordan Poole from my Warriors. They've got Kyle Kuzma. I love, and I do mean love, Tyus Jones. I think the Grizzlies were stupid, beyond stupid, to trade him to Washington, to let that guy go. I think he was the best backup point guard in the NBA. Now he's going to be, one of the better point guards, coming in the league this year with the Washington Wizards. Now, how much he'll touch the ball is going to be dependent on how much Jordan Poole's got the ball. But listen, Washington traded Bradley Beal. They traded Porzingis. They're absolutely in a rebuild situation. Of course, then again, rebuilding feels a bit generous given the fact that they haven't won a championship since the 70s. So it's, what are you rebuilding from? I mean, it's been a half century since Washington has been any sort of relevant. So Wizards there at the bottom of the Eastern Conference. Listen, Jordan Poole's going to get his shots. Okay, I saw Jordan Poole say the other day, hey, my legacy is set in NBA history since I got a ring. Thank God my Warriors traded him. Anyways, to the Detroit Pistons now, who I think will finish in 14th in the Eastern Conference. Look, I really liked Cade Cunningham when he was drafted first overall in 2021. They added James Wiseman, again, another former Warrior, too. I hate to put two former Warriors champions at the bottom of the East, but I got to be objective and do what I do here. But listen, I love James Wiseman's upside. When my Warriors took him second overall in 2020, I think he's still fully capable of reaching that in Detroit. But simply put, his timeline of development did not match up with the Warriors' timeline of contention. I think he'll have an opportunity to develop. Monty Williams now there as the head coach, one of the most respected head coaches in the NBA. I love Monty. I think he's going to do a really good job there and get Detroit slowly but surely back to relevance. But this year simply will not be the year. They will, however, improve. I think they won 17 games last year, only 17 games. I'll bump them up to 27. So Detroit will be a little more respectable, but still in the cellar in the Eastern Conference. The Charlotte Hornets at number 13. I think Charlotte made a boneheaded move by taking Brandon Miller over Scoot Henderson with the second overall pick. It was so bad that the Hornets mascot was mad at the upper management, and it happened to be Michael Jordan's final pick as the sort of de facto general manager of the of the Charlotte Hornets before he sold them. Listen, MJ has a history of bad draft picks, so why are we surprised? I'm not a big Brandon Miller guy. Off court issues aside, I like his game, but I just don't know if he can develop there in Charlotte. Listen, LaMelo Ball is coming back from injury, but there's only so much he can do with the roster that he's got over there. They did lose Kelly Oubre as well. Chicago Bulls 12 seeds. So Chicago came that close to making the playoffs, almost beat the Heat, who we of course know went to the finals last year in that last playing game. Chicago was a 10 seed last year, but listen, Lonzo Ball is still not going to come back from that knee injury. Looks like he's going to miss all the season, which sucks. Knock on wood for him that he's able to come back sooner rather than later and be some semblance of the player that he looked to be developing into. I'm a big DeMar DeRozan guy. I actually think there's a chance he may get traded at season's end. So I don't buy in the Bulls at all. I think Zach LaVine is absolutely going to be moved before the February deadline. There's been rumors about that for a long time, whether it be with the Knicks or whatever the case may be. He's one of the better, get your own shot two guards in the NBA. He's really done a good job at developing a consistent jumper since he came into the National Basketball Association, but I don't buy the Bulls at all. Like Billy Donovan as a head coach, but I don't buy Chicago to do much of anything this year. Brooklyn Nets, listen, how the I wouldn't even say how the mighty have fallen, how the somewhat mighty fell a little bit in regards to the Brooklyn Nets this season. So look, I liked the pieces they got in the Kevin Durant trade. I thought they still could have gotten a little bit more considering the fact that it's Kevin Durant. But you have Mikal Bridges. You have the kid Cam Johnson as well over there. So I like the pieces they've got in Brooklyn. I like some of the developmental situations that they have with the Brooklyn Nets. I think they're well coached. I really like Jacques Vaughn. I thought he should have gotten the job in 2020 over Steve Nash. He's got the job now. He's got his work cut out for him in terms of development. But listen, Brooklyn is kind of psychologically trying to recover from last year with the Kyrie controversy. Then they trade Kyrie. Then they trade Kevin Durant and what was the blockbuster deal of 2023. So it's kind of a psychological recovery period for the Brooklyn Nets. So I got them at the number 11 spot. So there's bottom 5 teams in the East. Brooklyn comes ever so slightly close to making the play-in tournament. If they make it, I won't be terribly surprised, but I simply don't think they have enough talent to get there, although I do like their coaching. So yeah, from 11 to 15, I've got the Nets, Bulls, Hornets, Pistons, and the Washington Wizards rounding out the bottom 5 in the Eastern Conference. So let's now move to the play-in teams. These are fringe playoff teams that we think are going to be kind of a little bit on the outside looking in. Obviously, half these teams will get in, half these teams will not in terms of my predictions. So at the 10 seed right there, I've actually got the Orlando Magic getting in the playoffs the play-in over the Brooklyn Nets. I was not huge on Paolo Banchero going number 1 overall in the 2022 draft. Actually did a draft show with my guys, Mike Guido, Barry Grant Jr., the two founders of the Grid Network. Shout out to both of those guys. All of us were, I think, the draft public was pretty shocked that Orlando took him over a guy I love in Jabari Smith, who's now with the Houston Rockets. But what Paolo showed me last year and what Paolo showed me even before the season started, I loved this. The fact that He's drafted by a pretty poorly run franchise historically in the Orlando Magic. And he says, you know what? I want to be a leader. And how often do you hear players talk about that? Like, especially young players, 18, 19-year-olds talk about, you know what, I want to lead this team. And last year, look, Orlando didn't make the play-in tournament. They didn't come terribly close to doing so. But with the young talent they got there, they've got Markelle Fultz. They've got Cole Anthony. They signed him to an extension pretty recently. They've got Franz Wagner there as well. So they got a really nice young core there in Orlando. And I think Paolo's has got the opportunity to be one of the up-and-coming stars in the NBA. And I do think he'll get Orlando into that play-in tournament at the 10 seed. At the 9 seed, the Indiana Pacers. I thought for a little bit, I've got Indiana, by the way, going 41-41 right there at 500. I thought about putting putting Orlando over Indiana. But let me tell you something, y'all. I love me some Tyrese Halliburton. Okay, I initially thought, and clearly, at least thus far, it looks like the Kings have won this trade. But when Sacramento traded Tyrese Halliburton to Orlando to Indiana, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is highway robbery by a pretty well-run franchise historically in the Pacers. They may not have any championships to show for it, but we always kind of respect the Pacers. Obviously, we know Indiana as a basketball state, Hoosiers and all that. Listen, the Pacers are a well-coached team now. Will they move Buddy Hield? It feels like this story's been going on for 4 years now, or really a couple of years ever since the Sacramento trade. Will Buddy Hield get traded to a contender? Will Miles Turner get traded to a contender? That all remains to be seen. I do think they'll keep this core intact. They did have a solid draft for the last couple of years. But again, I love Tyrese Halliburton, all-star level player. I think they'll make the all-star game this season, and the Pacers will get into the play-in tournament. At the 8th seed, the Toronto Raptors. Again, we're talking about young players, so I really buy into Scotty Barnes is one of them. I mean, I was genuinely shocked that they didn't take Jalen Suggs. I think it was number 4 back in 2021. They decided to go with Scotty Barnes out of Florida State, and all he did was win Rookie of the Year. They were able to retain OG Anunoby. It looks like Pascal Siakam probably is going to leave sooner rather than later. Whether he gets moved or not remains to be seen. I absolutely do think he'll finish the season with the Toronto Raptors. I think they're relatively well coached. I didn't love them firing Nick Nurse, but maybe it was a situation where it was best for both sides to move on. Masai Ujiri is one of the most brilliant general managers and president of basketball operations, rather, in the NBA. Toronto have always respected them as a franchise. They did lose Fred VanVleet, which hurts, but I think this will give some of the younger players an opportunity to really, assert themselves. They took Grady Dick in the NBA draft. I really like his potential coming out of Kansas. So Toronto Raptors there at the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference. And rounding out, listen, this team feels like it's going to be hanging around the 7 spot until the second coming. The Atlanta Hawks at number 7. So look, Trae Young is really talented. I've loved Trae Young since he came out of Oklahoma. I know that he had a lot of expectations surrounding him in terms of, is he going to be the next Steph Curry? That's a little strong. Steph, I think, is knocking on the door of being one of the 5 greatest basketball players to ever live. So I think it's hard to put those type of expectations on Trae Young. They did have DeJounte Murray. That backcourt didn't work as well as a lot of people thought it would. I was never a big buyer into that in terms of it working in the regular season or in the playoffs. They did push Boston to 6 games in the first round, but if there's anything Atlanta does is score. If there's anything they don't do, it's play defense. So that's going to hurt them in a lot of games, but they can win shootouts with the best of them. Again, we saw them do it with the Celtics last year. Trae Young's a big game player. So I do think the Atlanta Hawks will be right in the thick of that playoff and play-in mix in the Eastern Conference and be the 7th seed once again. They were the 8th seed in terms of record last year, but they shocked the Miami Heat in Miami, got the 7th seed, and wound up losing to the Celtics. So yeah, that's what I got, 7 to 10. So from 7 to 10, I've got Hawks, Raptors, Pacers, and the Orlando Magic as my 4 play-in teams in the Eastern Conference. Let's move on to the playoff teams. Guys, the teams are absolutely in the 4 through 6 seeds in the Eastern Conference. So we're talking about fringe contenders, maybe legit contenders, your 4, 5, 6 seeds. Let's look at them right now in the Eastern Conference where I have them slated. So I've got the Miami Heat, the defending Eastern Conference champions, as the 6th seed, not having to play in the play-in tournament for the second year in a row. Listen, you guys know I love me some Jimmy Butler. Okay, that dude, Jimmy Buckets. We know what the playoff Jimmy thing. What he did getting this team to the finals last year was absolutely special. He's one of the better shot creators at his position in the NBA. Not exactly known for being a shooter, but can score down low. We know what Jimmy Butler's game is. Obviously, Miami, I know everybody's kind of sold their stock in the Heat, saying like, hey, they came off the finals last year and they're going to add Dame. And it never happened. Obviously, Dame is now a Milwaukee Buck. Listen, if there's any organization that can pick itself off the mat, off of the disappointment of not acquiring one of the 10 best players in all basketball, it is this Miami Heat squad. I know a lot of people are making a big deal about them losing some of their key players like Gabe Vincent. And I'm forgetting the other guy's name that went to the Cleveland Cavaliers, one of the shooters they had. But listen, at the end of the day, let's be honest, those organizations overpay, especially Cleveland paying for that guy. His name is escaping me right now, the shooter for the Miami Heat that went to the Cavaliers. But let's be honest, Miami, more than I would argue any organization in the NBA, Golden State, you could argue, but I'd still put Miami above them in this regard, that they get the absolute most. They squeeze every juice, every drop of juice out of whatever the talent they have has to give. By the way, Tyler Hero missed every single playoff game but the first last year, and the Heat still got to the finals. He's coming back. Is he disgruntled given the fact that he was in multiple trade offers reportedly throughout the offseason potentially? But Bam Adebayo's, I think, is going to have a big year. Eric Spoelstra's still the best coach in basketball, and Pat Riley still is the evil genius in the NBA. He is still the godfather after all. So Miami will absolutely be competitive. They will be the 6th seed. The 5 seed will be the Philadelphia 76ers, who are complete turmoil. I am making this prediction assuming Joel Embiid plays this year start to finish as a member of the 76ers. Again, as I mentioned earlier on the show, there have been reports that he could end up with the New York Knicks, that the Knicks offered a package, something like Julius Randle, RJ Barrett, some multiple first-round picks. I mean, a haul, no question about it for Joel Embiid. I do think he'll finish this year with Philadelphia. Whether or not he'll stay there long term is a different matter. But listen, I love Tyrese Maxey. I think he'll be capable of being that number 2. James Harden will come back at some point, but I think by the time he does, Maxey will be the established second best player, or second option rather, on this Philadelphia team. They still have Tobias Harris. They still have some of these key veteran players. Again, I don't trust Philly at all. I did like them hiring Nick Nurse. I think Nick Nurse is an upgrade over Doc Rivers. We've seen Nick Nurse coach teams to championships in the past and have playoff success before, so I do like that component. But it's typical 76ers. There's in-house drama that's gotten to the outside, and I feel like it's going to derail them once again. But I do think they're simply too talented not to be amongst one of the 5 best teams in the East. So I've got Philadelphia as the 5 seed. At the 4 seed, a team I'm really buying stock on as a fringe contender, the New York Knicks. So Jalen Brunson is a guy who I don't know if Jalen will ever, maybe he will, but I don't think last year, if we had to name the top 20 players in the NBA, I would say over half of basketball fans and media out there would not put Jalen Brunson in their top 20. I mean, I don't, because his tangibles, the things we can see, doesn't blow you out of the building, right? Doesn't blow the roof off. He's a good shooter, good ball handler, good distributor. What I love about Jalen Brunson is his intangibles, his leadership, what he brings to the New York Knicks. One could argue Julius Randle is probably more talented, but if the Knicks were going to try and develop a contender with Julius Randle as its best player, that was never going to happen. We saw that experiment worked a couple years back, and they made the playoffs, had an ugly exit to Atlanta, and then the next year had an absolutely disastrous season. They had Jalen Brunson. He led them to the Eastern Conference semis. Knicks had a really, really successful season last year, and I think they have the potential to take a step forward. I think they do win 51 games this year. I really, really like the Knicks, where they're going. Tom Thibodeau, one of the better coaches, one of the better defensive coaches in the NBA, like their depth, Emmanuel Quickley, the whole bit. Mitchell Robinson. So they've got depth in New York. They've got playoff experience now. Jalen Brunson has played some big games in his basketball life, dating back to college at Villanova. Whether or not they'll add Joel Embiid remains to be seen. I don't think they'll need him this year, given the pieces they have around them and around Brunson and Randle to win 50 games and be the 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. So there you go. Those are 4 to 6. Those are kind of my fringe contending teams out east. I do think the Knicks can maybe make things interesting. Miami, certainly, we know Heat culture. They're always going to make things tough on whoever. Miami is that one team that obviously we're going to get to teams like Milwaukee and Boston in just a moment. But those 2 teams, they would prefer, certainly Milwaukee, and frankly Boston too, because Miami beat them both last year. Obviously, both teams have gotten better, but both of those teams are like, God, if we could just avoid the Heat, we'd rather play the Knicks and the Sixers with Embiid, without Embiid, doesn't matter. We'd rather play them over the Miami Heat. Like, it's unbelievable. So I do think, though, those 3 teams are in the mix to potentially contend. Philadelphia would have to make some kind of insane move and add another star with Embiid for me to buy into them at all, because I do think they upgrade at coach, but there's too much drama around that basketball team. Now, as far as the top 3 seeds in the Eastern Conference, so we're talking about some contenders here. No surprise at 1 and 2. I'll start, though, with number 3, the Cleveland Cavaliers. You're like, Bryce, you're giving love to a Cleveland team? Of course I am, because I'm objective, okay? I may not like Cleveland. maybe seriously rooting for against Cleveland. I hope they go 0-82 every season, but that's of course not realistic. Look, Donovan Mitchell last year, we our lasting memories of him is in that series against the Knicks. He really struggled, shot a bad percentage, had some terrible second halves in that series against New York. However, let's not ignore the fact that last year he did have a 70-point game. Like that did happen. Okay, he was all NBA. He's capable of being that type of player. You do have Evan Mobley, who just gets better and better and better every year. Darius Garland is emerging as one of the better point guards in the NBA. I do think they're well coached with JB Bickerstaff. Really good developmental coach, has turned into a guy where, okay, the expectations are kind of on Cleveland now to really take that next step forward. They made some moves in free agency, adding some guys. So I like where the Cavaliers are at right now in terms of their roster makeup. I like where, listen, when you have teams that get embarrassed, talented teams, by the way, young talented teams that get embarrassed in the first round, no doubt about it, these last 6 months, those younger players in Cleveland, along with Donovan Mitchell, have been talking about, hey, this is our opportunity to get revenge on the whole NBA, not just the Knicks, but really make a statement. I do think the Cavs are a 50-win team. I had them as the 3 seed last year. Sue me, they were the 4 seed last year? Yeah, the 4 seed last year against the New York Knicks. So I do have the Cavaliers as the 3 seed in the Eastern Conference. Boston, Milwaukee, that's the debate out east. Those are the 2 true blue contenders in the Eastern Conference, the teams that, if you look at any prediction by anybody in terms of their NBA Finals prediction, it's either the Celtics or the Bucks. Who's the 1 seed? Who's the 2 seed? I'm actually going to give the ever so slight edge to Boston as the 1 seed with 60 wins and Milwaukee with 59 wins. So neck and neck as the 2 seed. The only thing that separated, and it is tiny, it is by the slimmest of margins because I think the gap between these 2 teams is just tiny. I think it's going to take a little bit of time to work Dame into the lineup and work this Dame Giannis duo. I do think it's going to work. But through the first couple of weeks, like it might be a little bit of a struggle. By the way, LeBron James, when he went to Miami in 2010, I think the Heat might have had a losing record through their first 10, 15 games of a season. So it was a process. They had to work it out, but in the long run, it worked. LeBron was phenomenal. Dwayne Wade, kind of at the end of his prime, was very successful and very instrumental to a lot of championship winning teams for the Heat at that time. I think that's kind of where the Milwaukee Bucks are at right now, where Giannis is Giannis. He's the unquestioned face of the Bucks, the unquestioned leader of the Bucks. And even Damian Lillard acknowledged that during media day. Chris Middleton's your 3. Chris Middleton is a guy who's got multiple All-Star games on his belt, on his resume, and he's your 3. That's great stuff for the Milwaukee Bucks moving forward. They still got Brook Lopez. They still got Bobby Portis. I think they upgraded at head coach. I didn't like the whole situation with Terry Stotts. Thought that was a little weird, especially given his connection to Dame. I thought that was that was a little odd, given how that whole situation sort of panned out. But I've got the Milwaukee Bucks as the 2 seed, and the 1 seed there you see in there with 60 wins. I think the only 60-win team in the NBA this year will be the Boston Celtics. So if you would have asked me this question last month, I mean, literally, or whenever the Dame trade, right when the Dame trade was made, and I said it on the show, Milwaukee's the favorites to win the 2024 NBA title. That is until Boston added Drew Holiday. And when you consider the offseason they had, when you consider they added Kristaps Porzingis, you're like, well, Bryson, Kristaps can't stay healthy. Kristaps is not going to be the number 1 option. He's not going to be the number 2 option. Some nights he may not even be the number 3 option. So you're not going to rely on him to be sort of the anchors, one of the cornerstones of your basketball team. You still have Al Horford there. I didn't love that they gave up Robert Williams in the Drew Holiday trade, but Boston has been dying for a point guard for the longest time. Obviously, remember the years with the Isaiah Thomas, not the Hall of Famer Isaiah Thomas, the other Isaiah Thomas, the 5'9" one who finished top 5 in MVP voting for a season. Kyrie was there for a little while. That didn't work in the long run, obviously. Now they've got a true point guard and the best defensive guard in all of basketball in Drew Holiday adds to that team. Great veteran leadership. And I think one of the most underrated acquisitions in the NBA this offseason, I don't think it's close, and nobody's talking about it. Sam Cassell, obviously former NBA player, is now the number 1 assistant to Joe Mazzulla with the Boston Celtics. So you're talking about a guy who, Sam Cassell's been around the block. And I'm not rooting against Joe Mazzulla, obviously. I think he's a really, really good dude. I have questions about his coaching, but adding Sam Cassell, their veteran guy, to sort of be the 1B to Mazzulla's 1A, to a certain extent with the Boston Celtics. So coaching improvements, roster improvements, identity improvements. I think for Boston, Jason Tatum is still one of the 6 or 7 best players in the sport. In my viewpoint, Jaylen Brown got the bag, rightfully so. They had to keep him in order to stay back in title contention. Love of the Boston Celtics right now. So that's my top 3 teams out east. And we've got a Cavs fan in the comments here. It's my guy, Mike Guido. He will not stop talking about Emoni Bates. And by the way, for those of you who don't know, Emoni Bates, you're not you're not alone in that regard. Emoni Bates was the high school phenom who had some issues character-wise in college, off the court stuff. But Mike Guido said coming to this draft, Mike, if you're still in the comments, was he your 6th best player on your draft board? Something like that. Mike and I did a draft show, the 2023 NBA draft show on the Grid Network back in June when it happened, right after about a week and a half after the finals were over. So it was a fun time. But Mike was very high in Emoni Bates. The Cavs stole him in the 2nd round, and he had a pretty good summer league, I must say. I do not think, though, Mike, Emoni Bates is going to be a key reason why your Cavs win 52 games. Okay, let's not get too greedy. Okay, we got to see him. We got to see him put it together. But there's my Eastern Conference standings, 1-15. I do think Boston, Milwaukee, neck and neck at the top. I think most people have it that way. I've got Boston winning 60 games, Milwaukee winning 59, but just neck and neck in that Eastern Conference. A couple 50-win teams with the Cavs and Knicks, and obviously got your bad teams down below. We don't need to spend too much time on them. Again, Miami will be right back in the mix, like that team you don't want to face in the first round. So that's my Eastern Conference predictions. And for the record, I don't have a graphic for the play-in tournament, but the teams I do think will make the playoffs, out of the Eastern Conference, the teams that will make the play-in tournament out of the Eastern Conference, to me, will be the Atlanta Hawks as the 7 seed, and I think the Orlando Magic. Watch the heck out for Paolo Banchero and that young group of talent that they've got in Orlando. I think the Magic as the 10 seed will get in the playoffs out of the play-in tournament as the 8 seed and take on the Boston Celtics. There's my Eastern Conference predictions. Now let's move on to the Western Conference and the bottom of the West real quick. So at the bottom, I've got the Portland Trailblazers as the 15th seed and last place out west, winning only 24 games. Listen, again, that's another team where I love the young talent they got there. Scoot Henderson has all the potential to be a superstar in this league. They've got guys like Shaedon Sharpe, who's maybe the most athletic guard, certainly from a leaping standpoint in the NBA. They've got some good young players. They added some players in a trade. And by the way, the Damian Lillard trade is the gift that keeps on giving for the Portland Trailblazers in the sense that they keep moving guys over and over. They got Drew Holiday, they moved him. Now they've got Malcolm Brogdon. There's a chance they move him as well. So they could, when you look at what Portland's going to get long haul for Damian Lillard, long term for Damian Lillard, this could really, really be a win for both sides. Dame gets to play for a contender for the first time, and Portland gets to go in a rebuild, which Portland tends to be one of those franchises that rebuilds pretty quickly. Chauncey Billups, I think, is a good developmental coach, but they're still a long ways off from competing even for a play-in spot. Even with Dame, certainly without Dame, they're a long ways off, but they will be the most exciting last place team that we've seen in the NBA in some time. Expect a lot of dunks and a lot of scoring, but not a lot of defense. But listen, sometimes it's how it is in NBA 2K or out in rec league. So the Portland Trailblazers will be the rec team of 2023 through 24. 14 seed Houston Rockets. I like the pieces they've got there in Houston. I think Jabari Smith is going to have a bounce back year. He had a rough rookie season. He was my predicted rookie of the year last season. I loved him coming out of Auburn in the draft. Kind of had a down year last year, dealt with some injuries and external circumstances, but was able to come back. He had a great summer league. He had a crazy buzzer beater in summer league. So he's back. I think his confidence is up. They hire Ime Udoka. We understand the defensive mastermind he is, what he did for the Boston Celtics, helping them get to the finals in his lone season there. They did add Fred VanVleet, who is an all-star caliber player. I just think there's I don't know if Ime is going to be able to institute a consistent defensive, identity right off the bat. And again, the West is just so good. I can't see any scenario where Houston kind of fits in there. And oh, by the way, they gave somebody who came from the Memphis Grizzlies. They decided to give him over $80 million. I didn't know, shooting sub 30% got you that, but hey, what am I doing counting other people's money? The San Antonio Spurs with Wemby. They'll win 31 games. They'll be somewhat interesting, but they'll be the 13th seed. A lot of people have them in the play-in tournament. Listen, I love Wemby. I love the Spurs culture, and Pop is one of the best coaches ever. Let's pull back just a little bit, okay? There's a reason that the Spurs did have the first pick in order to get Wemby. I'm pretty sure there was a stretch last season where they lost like 22 or 23 of 23 or 24 games. Like they had this insane losing streak last season where they openly tanking, whatever the case may be. They were certainly deserved that number one pick, and not just from a they were bad enough to get it standpoint, but from a San Antonio's had some of the best international scouts in all of basketball. We understand them scouting Tim Duncan and more so scouting Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili. Patty Mills was part of a championship team in 2014. Like the Spurs are able to find, overseas talent as well as, and before it was really the thing, before the NBA really became an international league, the Spurs were the head of the curve on that. So it feels like almost like a reward for them that they get the most hyped prospect and the most talented prospect, the prospect with the highest ceiling since the great LeBron James. Is Wemby going to be LeBron? I don't think so. If he's LeBron, that means he's in the GOAT discussion. I don't think Wemby's going to be there, but he's got all the talent in the world. I do like some of their guard play that they got there. And Pop, we understand what he represents and what he brings to the table. But again, they're not very good defensively. Wemby will help with that, but you can't be just one elite defensive player on the floor and four bad ones. So they do have some good big play as well. But San Antonio will be interesting. Wemby will win them some games, but ultimately they will be the 13th seed out west. However, listen, they will be one of those teams. You got to tune in League Pass and see what Wemby does any given night. Utah Jazz, the 12 seed. Jazz were a very surprising team last year in the sense that we all thought, certainly I did, that they were just going to tank, that they were going to say, you know what, we traded Donovan Mitchell, we traded Rudy Gobert, let's just go in the tank. We got all these draft picks. Danny Ainge, if there's anything Danny Ainge knows how to do, he's like Sam Presti in Oklahoma City. That dude knows how to get some draft picks. And I think Utah, they've again, another organization that they don't have any championships to show for it, but we've always respected the Jazz. Maybe not believed in them as much as we believe in like the Lakers or teams like that or the Celtics, but we've always respected the Jazz as an organization that can get it right quick. I think Utah will do that in a certain sense, but when it's all said and done, they simply don't have the talent to do so. Lauri Markkanen had a big-time season last year. I like Colin Sexton over there, but ultimately the Jazz simply do not have the talent to get to the next level, to get to the play-in tournament, which, to their credit, they almost did last year. Minnesota Timberwolves, 11 seed. I don't even think they're getting to the play-in tournament because I think Karl-Anthony Towns is going to get traded at some point this season. I love Anthony Edwards so much. I wasn't even that huge on Edwards coming out of the draft in 2020. I thought James Wiseman was the best overall prospect. Clearly, I've been very wrong on that thus far to this point. But listen, he's an all-star caliber player. He's a guy who's capable, talent-wise, of being one of the 10 best players in the NBA. The Timberwolves obviously were a playoff team last season. But I think once the organization kind of goes all in on this being Anthony Edwards' franchise, I think I think you'll get to a point where like, okay, do we move off Karl-Anthony Towns? Are we comfortable with him being our second best player or our two? And he knows he's the two. I'm not sure that's going to be the case. And listen, I'm not a big believer in Chris Finch. I'm not. I've seen so many instances where his teams have just folded late game, big game situations. They're terrible situationally. They're not terribly well coached. In Minnesota's Minnesota. We kind of all expect them to screw it up. So I do think they're going to miss the play-in tournament. And maybe Anthony Edwards asks out. Maybe he does what Kevin Garnett should have done way before he ended up doing, and that's asking out, ending up on a title contending team. But we know how poorly run Minnesota is, so this is kind of going to be yet another failed season for the Timberwolves. So yeah, that's my bottom five out west from 11 to 15. Timberwolves, Jazz, Spurs, Rockets, and Blazers. Let's move on to the play-in teams. So teams that are like fringe playoff teams. Again, I think half of these teams, obviously, by the way the play-in tournament goes, will get in the playoffs. Let's look at 7 through 10. So at 10 right there, you've got the Dallas Mavericks. Again, I'm not a big believer in Dallas in terms of the bad decisions they made over the last few years in terms of letting Jalen Brunson go and trading for Kyrie Irving, given the fact that they were the 4 seed. They were humming. They were playing good basketball. Luka was in the MVP discussion. And they trade for Kyrie Irving, and it all goes by the wayside to the point where last offseason, they have a choice. They had to pay Kyrie. Because if you don't pay Kyrie, then you just traded to go from the 4 seed to the 11 seed and get nothing out of it. So that'd have been the ultimate disaster. Mark Cuban was put in a bind where he had to make the move to go get Kyrie. I still think Luka is the 6th or 7th best player in all basketball. He's capable any given night to be the best player on the floor. We know the scorer and distributor that he is, and Kyrie is one of the most sensational talents in terms of handling the basketball and shooting the basketball that we've ever seen in the history of this league. But again, that's a team that is very offensive-minded, offensive-geared. That can't stop a nosebleed frankly, we saw a couple of years ago in the playoffs against the Phoenix Suns in some of those games in that series, certainly against my Warriors in the Western Conference Finals. They simply couldn't get enough stops down the stretch of those games in order to advance further in the playoffs, certainly against in the Western Conference Finals 2 years ago. Dallas is talented. They added my man Grant Williams, who I think will make an impact for them this year. I don't like Jason Kidd as a head coach of this team, but I simply don't trust him to take any more steps. We know, listen, I can't go against history in what Kyrie Irving has shown me post LeBron James. Okay, he blew up the Boston locker room. He blew up the Brooklyn locker room. I mean, do I have any reason to believe that this can be any different in Dallas? And this could be a very tumultuous season for the Mavericks. And it's a shame, too, considering that they had a good thing going with Brunson, but that's where they're at as the 10 seed. Los Angeles Clippers at the 9 seed. Again, I didn't buy the Clippers last year. I said they'd be a first-round exit. Lo and behold, they were a first-round exit. You say, Bryson, Kawhi got hurt. Paul George got hurt. Yeah, because they always do. And I hate it for him. I've always been a Paul George guy. And I did buy into the playoff P moniker more a couple of years ago when he literally carried that team to the Western Conference Finals when Kawhi Leonard went down in the second round. But you have to, obviously you're not rooting for, knock on wood, that both Kawhi and PG stay healthy. But again, talk about recent history with Kyrie. I can't go against recent history with Kawhi and Paul George. They get hurt. They're brittle. They struggle to stay healthy with these lower body injuries. I do think Ty Lue is one of the better coaches in the NBA, and I do like the depth that they've got. Whether or not they'll make the move for James Harden, right now it doesn't appear they're going to do so. Maybe if they're week into the season or 2-3 weeks of the season, things aren't going well. Maybe they get a little bit desperate and decide to make the move for Harden and trade their beloved Terrence Mann in order to do so. But listen, the addition of Westbrook, it helped them. He had some solid games in the playoffs last year. But Russell Westbrook is the ultimate when there's no pressure, when he's the man, when nobody expects them to win. He's great. But when you need him to be a key, integral piece to a team that's trying to win and win at the highest level, that's just not him. It hasn't been him for the vast majority of his career. Let's be honest, Westbrook fans. So I think the Clippers are a play-in team, but not a team that's immediately in the playoffs. 8 seed New Orleans Pelicans. I have wanted to buy into Zion Williamson for so long, and it's him and Ben Simmons. It's like the age-old, tale as old as time. That's every offseason. Oh my goodness, look how ripped Zion Williamson looks. Oh, Ben Simmons is hitting threes in the gym. Could you do that for a full season? 65 games, something like that? And for the record, loved Zion Williamson out of Duke. Loved him in 2019. Loved Zion. Wish he'd have went to the Knicks. He'd have been great box office draw for them. Ends up in New Orleans, which is a great city as well. Just not the marquee that Madison Square Garden is, obviously. I do think they're well coached, but I can't trust Zion to stay healthy. If I could, then I'd say that the Pelicans, given that they have CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram, who I love, could be in that sort of 5-6 seed spot, which is where I predicted him to be last year. But a year ago, Zion goes down midseason. They failed to even make they failed to make the playoffs. They actually lost to Oklahoma City, who I have as the 7 seed, the top of the play-in tournament, the Oklahoma City Thunder. So look, OKC, they did win their first playing game against the Pelicans last year in New Orleans, but then got mollywopped by the Minnesota Timberwolves. But look, in terms of Oklahoma City's potential, they just get better and better. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is slowly starting to put himself in that top 10 players in the NBA discussion. I had him in the top 5 of my MVP voting last year. If I had an MVP vote, he would have been in my top 5, given what he did last year. He's literally, if you look at his points per game, they get better and better every single year. He averaged 30 a season ago. And also, Chet Holmgren. Now, Chet is a guy who I had big questions about coming into that 2022 draft. The same questions that a lot of folks had is about his size. It's about, man, he's really lanky. Can his body hold up in the NBA? But if weight is ever an issue with guys in the NBA, that's usually a good thing because that's something that you can add on muscle. Eventually, some of it's not necessarily just muscle. Some of it's these are 18, 19-year-old kids who haven't grown into their man body yet. So I think Chet Holmgren, you're seeing his physique now compared to when he was at Gonzaga, night and day difference. And we've seen him in the preseason thus far light it up. And in the summer league as well. I think he'll be in that rookie of the year discussion with the Oklahoma City Thunder. Sam Presti's one of the best general managers in basketball, was able to acquire even more draft picks. I didn't know it was possible, but able to acquire more draft picks during the offseason. I think they're well coached. I like their the 2 guys they got. One of them out of Arkansas. His name escapes me at this particular moment in time, but they're deep with young talent. I think Shai Gilgeous will get them to the 7 seed in the Western Conference. So 7 through 10, I got Thunder, Pelicans, Clippers, and Mavericks. To the fringe contenders, so they're in the playoffs. They're solid 4 through 6. But not quite in the level as the top 3. Let's look at 4 through 6. I've got the Sacramento Kings as the 6th seed. Listen, Sacramento was the surprise of the NBA last season. I don't think there's any question about that, given the fact that they had the best offense in NBA history, historically, when you look at the numbers. De'Aaron Fox was the clutch player of the year last season. Mike Brown was the coach of the year, unanimous coach of the year, rightfully so, in my opinion, last year. Domantas Sabonis had a big-time season as well. And I still think this team will be, I have no reason to believe that this team won't be great in terms of scoring. Once again, I do have questions about them defensively. And frankly, I'll be honest with you, I do have questions about Domantas Sabonis, whether or not Golden State kind of exposed him a little bit in the playoffs as sort of just like a one-trick pony in the regular season, because he had a terrible series against my Warriors in that first-round series last year. But look, this team can win a shootout with any team in basketball. I don't care who they are. Malik Monk coming off the bench. Keegan Murray, I really, really buy into this kid and what he brings to the table. So I think he'll be an impact player for years to come for the Sacramento Kings. And I think Mike Brown's one of the better coaches. Mike Brown, by the way, defensive-minded coach, so maybe Sacramento can get it right at some point on that side of the floor, but I do think they're a playoff team. I do have them as the 6th seed. 5 seed, I've got the Memphis Grizzlies. So there's the Ja Morant suspension. That's the elephant in the room. He's docked for the first 25 games due to some off-court stuff on Instagram Live. But I do like the talent. Now, they lost Steven Adams for the season. I read the news on Sunday that he had a knee surgery. He'd be missing the entirety of this NBA season, which sucks. Steven Adams, one of the most likable guys in the league, so I hate that for him. Listen, they did move on from the albatross that used to wear number 24. They moved on from him, so they're in a good spot in that regard. But I do have some questions about Taylor Jenkins situationally in the playoffs. Jaren Jackson Jr. is a great defensive player, great shot blocker, great rebounder. Dude can't stay out of foul trouble. And they move on from Tyus Jones. But again, Memphis has experience without Ja Morant. I do think had Tyus Jones still been there, I swear to you, I'd have them in that discussion as the 3 or 4 seed, even with Ja down for the first 25. He will eventually come back. I do think he'll have a solid season in the he's probably not going to play all 57 games when he comes back, but however much action he gets when he comes back, I do think Ja will play well, and the Grizzlies will be right back in sort of that middle tier in the Western Conference. That's where I've got them. And then the Phoenix Suns. I know a lot of experts out there are rolling their eyes at this. You got Phoenix as the 4 seed in the Western Conference. No question about it, and I don't even think it's arguable. They are not on the level of Denver. They are not on the level of the Lakers. They are not on the level of my Warriors. Is the talent there? Kevin Durant's spectacular. I think he's the 15th greatest player ever. They've got Bradley Beal, who I don't think is going to play tonight due to some back issues. Devin Booker, we know what he brings to the table. He had a ridiculous playoff run last year. He was putting up some of the greatest shooting splits we've ever seen in the history of the playoffs. Here's the problem. They still don't have a point guard. Here's another problem. They moved on from DeAndre, in which you understand that to a certain extent, given the locker room stuff. There was just a disconnect between him and the organization. You understand why they moved on. But in favor of Yusuf Nurkic, who can't stay healthy to save his life, who ends every single season. Again, knock on wood for him. I like Nurkic as a human being. Nurkic cannot stay healthy to save his life. That's been a real issue for them. Kevin Durant can't stay healthy. Beal can't stay healthy. I don't love their bench. It's better than it was last year when they made the Durant deal. And I do like Frank Vogel. I thought the Lakers did him dirty. I think he should still be the head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers over Darvin Ham. But I think overall there's some serious. I always say I have a rule on this show that if I have more questions than answers about where you're at as a team, NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, the whole bit, college football, college sports as a whole, that I do not buy you as a contender. That is exactly how I feel about the Phoenix Suns. I do not believe that they are on the echelon of the teams I'm going to mention 1, 2, and 3 in the Western Conference. So that's where I've got 4, 5, 6. Phoenix can be talented enough. Again, I've got them right there winning 49 games. So on the fringe of 50 wins, they're talented enough to get that. Talent alone, as well as good coaching with Vogel, will get them to a certain point, but I do not buy them as a team that can put together a long playoff run or even a great regular season for that matter. You're going to hear Phoenix is going to be that team, folks, where there's always one team a year where this is the case. Phoenix is going to be the team where all season long they'll have some clunky games. They'll have some bad defensive performances. Well, they'll turn it on in the playoffs. What if they simply don't have the personnel to do so? That's my question. By the way, Beal's bad defensively. Booker's okay defensively, but not exactly going to be mistaken with Drew Holiday. And Kevin Durant is 35 years of age. He is 35 years of age. That's not It's not in his DNA at this stage of his career. So way more questions than answers about the Suns coming into this season. So I've got them at the 4 seed, followed by Memphis at 5 and Sacramento at 6. So the top of the Western Conference to me, undeniably, in this order, the 3 best teams out west, starting at number 3, the Los Angeles Lakers. I do have them slated to win 50 games this season. So LeBron coming back for year 21. We understand the smack talk that a lot of people have for LeBron. Oh my God, he got swept again. Well, look, it's not exactly a bad thing, or I shouldn't say a bad thing. It's not an embarrassment to get swept by the Denver Nuggets, considering what they did to just about everybody they faced in the playoffs, and considering the fact that your second best player, Anthony Davis, is he's coin flip Davis, but more on him in just a second. But LeBron's coming back. I mean, we forget because he had an up and down the playoffs. His highs were really high. I mean, he had a huge game 6 to close out my Warriors in the second round, had a massive 40-point game in which he played all but 4 seconds in year 20. It's unbelievable what this guy can do, folks, against the Denver Nuggets in that closeout game 4 in Los Angeles. But I like some of the moves the Lakers made this offseason. They obviously brought back Rui Hachimura. They brought back Austin Reeves. I wish they would have brought back Schroeder over D'Angelo Russell. I think Schroeder's a better fit on the defensive side of the ball. Doesn't give you the offensive impact Russell does. Russell's really a hit-and-miss player from night to night. He can go 10 for 12. He could go 1 for 12. You never know which guy you're going to get any given night for him. But then again, he is a role player, so that's to be expected. And they added Gabe Vincent, who I really like. Is like a true blue point guard to really, because D'Lo is more of a 2 in that regard, kind of a hybrid type of player. So Gabe Vincent will work for them in that spot. I don't think the Christian Wood addition is near as big as people are giving it credit for. Listen, there's a reason the guy was available in September. Okay, a lot of teams could have picked him up. Dallas could have brought him back. Evidently, they didn't like what they saw there. A lot of teams could have picked Christian Wood up, but the Lakers were like, you know what? I guess we'll pick him up since he's the best free agent left in the market. But I do like where they are. They were the best defensive team in the NBA last year when they made all of those trades. I think that'll return again for them this year. I really like Jared Vanderbilt, by the way. Listen, it's all going to come down for the Lakers in terms of title contention to a guy. I'll put myself on the screen real quick. A guy I like to call, put this coin in the air. Coin flip Davis, who just flipped the coin. Okay, it landed on tails. That's not good, Lakers fans. He's going to struggle tonight against Denver. I'm sorry. I'm just telling you. If it's tails, that tails never fails. That's nonsense, okay? It's nonsense. Okay, tails almost always fails, at least when I flip the coin. Maybe it's a me problem. I don't know. But you never know what you're going to get from Anthony Davis. You could get one of the 5 best players in the league one night, and a guy who you're like, well, who is this dude? Is this the backup center for the Lakers? Is this guy a guy masquerading as AD, putting on a fake unibrow? What's going on here? But he's still one of the 12 best players of basketball. LeBron, I'm seeing these lists, folks. Talking about LeBron, is he, I saw one list had LeBron as like the 16th best player in basketball. What games are you guys watching? The man did average 28, 8, and 7 last year. In the back half of that season, dealing with a knee issue. An ankle issue late season. So LeBron's going to be great. This Lakers team is very talented. I have massive questions about Darvin Ham at head coach, but I like where they are in terms of depth. LeBron is still LeBron. He's going to give you I'm going to give him a stat line of 25 and 8, 25, 8 and 7. I'll dock him 3 points because he is in year 21 after all, but he had the greatest year 19 ever, greatest year 20 ever, and no reason to believe he won't have the greatest year 21 in the history of the NBA. And I don't care. Everybody says, folks, that's the greatest basketball player to ever live. We can have that discussion another day. Real quick before I get to my Warriors, got a comment from Philip Chanel. What's up, Philip? He's a big Lakers fan. He's in the comments. He says, I think if Davis stays healthy, and he's got if in all caps, he is going to win MVP. Wow. Okay. Big prediction. Listen, I've been waiting for Anthony Davis time. He missed his first year due to injury. So 2013. So this will be year 11 of actually year 12 technically, but year 11 in terms of him actually playing basketball games for Anthony Davis. I've kind of waited for him to be in that discussion. Maybe this will be the year, but again, I don't trust Anthony Davis physically. And we know LeBron is not going to play 65, 70 games, which we know you need to play in order to qualify for awards. AD ain't no way he's playing 65 games this year. No way it's happening. Golden State Warriors, my Golden State Warriors, Dub Nation, stand up. I've got us as the 2 seed in the Western Conference, winning one more game than the Lakers, 51-31 as with the final record. I know everybody, it's the tale as old as time. Every single season, we're talking about the Nuggets, rightfully so. They're the defending champions. Give them their respect. We're talking about the Lakers and the Suns. Out east, we're talking about the Bucks and the Celtics. A lot of these teams, rightfully so. I've heard some teams talk about, hey, Memphis may be a contender when Ja comes back. No, they're not. And we're just forgetting about this team residing in the Bay Area. And we forget that Golden State last season, literally everything short of one of their best players going down with an injury in the playoffs, everything short of that went haywire for him last season. Steph missed 20-plus games due to injury. Draymond dealt with some injury issues. We know that the elephant in the room with him and Jordan Poole. I read in recent reports saying that they didn't speak. They were on speaking terms for 2 months. You get the cancer that was Jordan Poole out of the locker room, as well as the bad shot taker out of the locker room. And again, for Golden State, and I kept saying this, that there's not one big move the Warriors need to make to be back in contention the following season, that being this season. Chris Paul wasn't a colossal, this huge earth-shattering deal to the level that, say, a Kevin Durant trade to Phoenix was. No question about it. But my questions for Golden State, all of them were answered. Dang, they need some veterans. Oh, they added Chris Paul. They added Dario Saric. They added these guys who have been there and done that around the NBA. Man, they could really use a good backup point guard to Steph and a good six-man. Oh, they traded for Chris Paul. Man, they need size. Oh, they added Dario Saric. They drafted Trace Jackson Davis, so I'm telling you, it's going to get minutes this year. All of the questions I had about my Warriors this season, all the things, by the way, brought back Draymond Green in the offseason, which was huge for this Warriors team. And I said all offseason, I said, if they do not bring Draymond Green back, this is not a contender. He's that crucial. He's that important to this basketball team. In my view, he's been the second most important player to this dynasty since 2014-15 season. Steph, obviously, number one at that list. I put Draymond at number two with respect to Klay Thompson. Golden State Warriors, obviously, we know Steve Curry's. He's one of the best coaches of basketball. Steph, come on. What else we need to say about Steph? He's sixth greatest player ever with a championship. He can move himself into that space as the greatest point guard of all time. Philip says, before I move on to Denver, Philip says, biggest question for y'all, Bryson, is Steph Curry's health. Perfectly legitimate question. I understand that, but I guess my retort to that is health problems have not plagued Steph in the playoffs recently. I think the last time Steph missed a game due to injury in the playoffs was 2018. He missed the whole first round against the Spurs with an injury, a lower body injury they suffered in the regular season. So listen, knick-knack injuries for Steph have not come back to plague him and really hurt him in the playoffs in quite some time. So, and by the way, I've seen a lot of Warriors fans, hey, this is going to be an MVP year for Steph. No, it's not. Steph is at the stage of his career, just like LeBron, just like Kevin Durant, where you're going to play 50, 55, 60 max. And I mean max. Even this, I'm not sure would be smart. 65 games. Steph is going to be 36 years old in March. Doesn't look like he's slowing down by any stretch of the imagination, but he is going to be 36 in March. The Warriors aren't going to try and get Steph an MVP. He's already got 2 of them. Okay, that part of his career has kind of come to a close. It's the win as many championships as I can stage of Steph's career. So I think he'll be on somewhat of I know there's a new rules by the NBA in terms of load management. I think they'll take that seriously in that regard. So Steph will be ready to go when it's all said and done by the time mid-April comes and the playoff comes around. He will lead the Warriors to the 2 seed in the Western Conference. And at number 1, the defending NBA champion Denver Nuggets. Not much not to like about this basketball team. By the way, their game tips off in about a half hour. I'm sorry, in about an hour. They're going to get their rings tonight. So congratulations to them. Nikola Jokic today as we sit here. And again, this is a what have you done for me lately discussion. Janet Jackson, what have you done for me? I don't want this thing to get taken down for copyright. Point is, Nikola Jokic as we sit here today is the best player in all of basketball. He put together one of the greatest individual playoff runs that we have ever seen by a player. Jamal Murray, coming off of that ACL tear, was spectacular last year, particularly in the playoffs, in which, with all due respect to Jokic, who proved me dead wrong about those MVPs, Jamal Murray should have been, in my view, been the MVP of the Western Conference Finals, given what he did to a great Lakers defense in that series. But Jamal, I think this could be his breakout season. He's going to be an all-star this year. Aaron Gordon, we saw the impact he had, especially on the defensive end, had some big games. That game 4 had a huge performance against the Miami Heat. You got Christian Brown coming off the bench, really good bench player for them. They did lose Bruce Brown, which I think is a bigger loss than people give them credit for. If Bruce had stayed around, I swear, I think I have the Nuggets winning 60 games this year because he was that crucial for them coming off the bench. He ended up with the Indiana Pacers, which I forgot to mention when I was talking about Indiana. But Michael Malone is an excellent coach. I've been saying that for a while, for many, many years in the show. He's an excellent head coach. Jokic, we know what he brings to the table. Jamal Murray is one of the better complementary stars to a superstar that we've seen in recent NBA memory. And the Denver Nuggets, I have no reason to believe that they will be right back at the top of the Western Conference and right back in the championship discussion. in the Western Conference and the NBA as a whole. So 1 through 3. So to me, the 3 best teams in the Western Conference from 1 to 3: Nuggets, Warriors, Lakers. Not the Suns. Okay. Sorry, Suns fans. And I like Suns fans. Okay. This is nothing against y'all. Nothing. All right. Before we get to playoff predictions, before we get to that, let's look at the team or the award, my award predictions. So who wins these awards in the NBA? So MVP, all that. MVP will do best for last in that regard. Let's start with most improved player, and I think it will be a member of my Golden State Warriors, Mr. Jonathan Kuminga. This will be his breakout season now that they've added Chris Paul. If there's anything that Chris Paul loves more than the pick and roll, it is lob threats. Remember Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan, the lob threats he had with the Los Angeles Clippers? Remember Clint Capella in Houston? Remember DeAndre Ayton in Phoenix? Now, all of those guys are big men. Jonathan Kuminga is not, obviously, but Jonathan Kuminga is the type of guy, he's got maybe the best vertical in all of basketball, not named Mac McClung or Shaedon Sharpe. He's one of the best athletes in the NBA. He's got the potential. I've said since the draft, since 2021 when he was taken early by my Warriors in the draft lottery, I said he has all the makings to be a more athletic Kawhi Leonard. I think he's got that kind of upside. We saw flashes of it last year when Wiggins missed that time due to the personal family matter where the Warriors were dealing with some depth problems. Steph Curry missed games. So Kuminga got an increase in minutes last year, and that's a big-time performances. This preseason, he was a monster in the minutes that he got. I think he was averaging darn near 20 points a game. He's not going to average 20 for the regular season, but I do think he's going to be right around that sort of 17, 18 point mark. And it would not surprise me. I'm dead serious when I say this, folks. It would not surprise me if he were to replace Draymond Green in that starting lineup just to add a level of athleticism and move Draymond to the bench with Chris Paul. I think Jonathan Kuminga is that kind of talent. I think he will be the most improved player in the NBA this year. And he could be potentially Steph's number 3 option behind Andrew Wiggins and potentially surpass Klay Thompson. That's where I have Kuminga this season. For the 6th man of the year, I think it's going to be Malik Monk. So Malik Monk had a magical season last year. Listen, that was the one guy a couple of years ago that the Lakers should not have let go, but did. And Malik Monk had a big time first round playoff performance against my Warriors. And in general, last season, he's a guy who's fully capable of going for 30 any given night. He's one of the better shooters in the NBA. Yeah, I love Malik Monk when he was at Kentucky. I don't like Kentucky. I'm a Vols fan. Malik Monk had a spectacular run there. Again, he's one of the better shooters, shot creators in the NBA. He's capable. He reminds me of Jamal Crawford, with obviously not quite as good of a handle as Jamal had, but he's capable of getting a shot whenever he wants, being the number 1 option whenever he wants. I think Sacramento's going to have another big-time performance this season from an offensive standpoint, and Malik Monk will be a very big part of that. I think he will be the 6th man of the year in 2024. Now moving on to the coach of the year, I think it will be Michael Malone of the Denver Nuggets. So Michael Malone, we understand he's been up front and center about he didn't like the attention the Lakers got and all that. He's very, very outspoken, coach. We understand that. But this is the guy I've been saying for a while. Just said just a second ago when I was talking about the Nuggets this season. He's a guy, he gets the best out of his team. He has his team ready to play every night. And again, we know Steve Kerr had a quote. I think he took this from either Greg Popovich or Phil Jackson, 2 of the best to ever do it. He said that coaching in the NBA is about 10% X's and O's. These guys know how to play at the end of the day. The smart players in Denver has plenty of those. They know how to play the game of basketball at a high level. Otherwise, they wouldn't have won the championship. 90% of it, managing personalities. Michael Malone, one of the best guys in the league at doing that. Listen, Denver isn't exactly a team with a whole lot of ego. The best player, Nikola Jokic, seems to be more interested in horse racing at times than he does basketball. Like it's mostly an egoless locker room, and Michael Malone does a great job of managing that. He's an excellent head coach, and I think he'll be this year's coach of the year. Moving on to rookie of the year, I debated between 3 guys: Chet Holmgren, Scoot Henderson, and the man I ended up selecting, Victor Wembanyama. Now, initially, I was going to take Scoot because that Scoot would play 65 games, which is, again, what you have to play now to win that award, at least by the way I've interpreted the new rules. But Wemby is a guy who, I read a quote recently by Wemby saying that, hey, if whatever games they will let me play, I'm all in. And obviously the Spurs, one of the smartest organizations in the league, they basically invented load management. Wemby, we know, had a little bit of a foot issue back when he was at France. But what this guy is a 2K player. Like, this is the type of player, you're on 2K, you're just screwing around with your buddies. Like, let's just create this guy who literally can't be stopped from an offensive standpoint and from a defensive standpoint. 7 feet 6 inches, got a handle, got a jumper. Obviously, he's a monster inside in the offensive end and on the defensive end. He's gonna be a guy blocking 2.5 shots a game next year. I think he'll score 20 points a game. I think he's got that type of upside, that type of talent. He absolutely annihilated teams, annihilated the Thunder, annihilated the Warriors in the preseason. This guy is just, he's ridiculous. You kind of run out of adjectives to describe the type of talent this guy is capable of becoming. I understand those who take Scoot and those who take Chet. Both are more than worthy candidates for this award. But I think when it's all said and done, Victor Wembanyama will be one of the stories of the NBA, albeit for a bad San Antonio team. But he will be the cornerstone for a team that is trying to get back to relevance in the Western Conference and the NBA title picture when it's all said and done. Victor Wembanyama will be the Rookie of the Year. Defensive Player of the Year, I think, is going to be Bam Adebayo of the Miami Heat. So Bam has been a guy who, I think this might be the third time, I'm not kidding, that I predicted Bam to win this award. But as they say, third time's a charm. I think I got a good chance of winning this one. So Bam's the guy who, again, the personal thing, this stuff matters. We're all off season. There's the discussions about bringing Dame in, and there was reports that, hey, would the Heat move Bam Adebayo for Damian Lillard? And even so, Bam is sitting back to say, like, time out, guys. Time out. Last year, I was the second best player in a team that went to the finals, and if you look at that finals, a strong case can be made. I was better than Jimmy Butler, who's our best player, obviously. We know the shot blocking he brings to the table, the rebounding that he brings to the table. He's a very smart basketball player playing at that position. I think Bam is going to have a monster year. Jaren Jackson's the popular pick, given that he won the award this past season. But again, the dude's in foul trouble too much. I might pick Jaren Jackson again if he didn't foul out midway through the third quarter. So Bam Adebayo doesn't have that type of problem. I think he will be the Defensive Player of the Year. And obviously, most importantly, most valuable player. Who wins it? It's going to be Nikola Jokic for the third time in 4 seasons. It felt like, this is 1,000% hindsight 2020, but it felt like to a certain degree, and people like me probably contributed to this, and for that, I apologize, that Jokic not winning MVP last year was a bit of a sympathy vote to Embiid, where it's, okay, there's these 2 great big men, 2 potential future Hall of Famers, Nikola Jokic, Joel Embiid. And like, where are we? We need to give Embiid respect. He led the league in scoring twice. They gave it to Embiid. At the time, I said Embiid was the right call. But at the end of the day, you validate winning MVP in the playoffs, and Embiid simply did not do that. Jokic, on the other hand, had one of the greatest runs we've ever seen. Again, to win MVP, you've basically got to play 65 games this season. I thought about Jason Tatum in that regard, given I think Boston's going to win 60. Steph's not playing 65. LeBron's not playing 65. Neither is Kevin Durant. So the list kind of gets narrowed down. I think Jokic will have a lot of team success, a lot of individual success, and I do think he will be the most valuable player in 2024. So that's my award predictions, and I'm sticking to them. I feel good about all of them. I really hope Jonathan Kuminga does end up as the most improved player, or bare minimum in the discussion, because, man, if he is, woo-wee, watch out for the Warriors. Nikola Jokic will be the MVP, though. Now, most importantly, this is what y'all tune into the show to do. This is what primarily I'm doing the show for, and and centering the show around. Who wins the championship? Who goes deep in the playoffs? Who hoists the Larry O'Brien Trophy in 2024? So let me go and put up the do we have Eastern Conference first round predictions. I'll go and put them up right now. So given how I think the standings will play out, I think the Magic will face the Celtics. The Celtics will win quickly in a sweep. Boston's just simply more talented than Orlando. Orlando is in a rebuilding stage, and I think the Celtics will have the best record of basketball this year. So I would be genuinely shocked if the Magic ended up getting a game on Boston. I think the Celtics would win that series in 4 games. Atlanta would face Milwaukee in what's a rematch of the 2021 Eastern Conference Finals. I would take the Bucks in 5 games. Again, Atlanta can't stop a nosebleed. The one year they actually did get to the Eastern Conference Finals and lose the Bucks, they were a lot better defensively than they have been the last couple of seasons. I just think Damian Lillard is going to take, whether it's Trae Young guarding him, whether it's DeJounte Murray guarding, whoever's guarding Dame. I think that's going to be a Damian Lillard series. Should this come to pass, I would take the Bucks to win in a gentleman's sweep. Trae Young will get them one. Trae Young, last 2 years, has gotten, now he got 2 last year. The Hawks got 2 games off Boston, but that one Game 5 in the Garden, Trae Young was absolutely special. He'll get 1 game in this series, but Milwaukee's simply the better team. They would win in a gentleman's sweep. I'd take Miami to beat Cleveland in 6 games. The 6 seed over the 3 seed. Listen, I had to get a dig in at Cleveland, but I do really believe this is what would happen should this matchup come to pass. Heat culture, Jimmy Butler, playoff Jimmy. What more needs to be said? We know Donovan Mitchell really struggled in the playoffs last year. And again, this still is a very, very, very young basketball team. And so that has to be taken into account as well. I think Miami's in a spot where this is kind of a prove the whole league wrong this year, that we don't need Damian Lillard. Force the media, force everybody, force the fans to give us our respect. I mean, we were, after all, one of the last 2 teams standing. We did take out your 2 title darlings in the Eastern Conference, beating Boston, beating Milwaukee to get to the NBA Finals, and doing so. So Jimmy's going to be awesome in that series. I think they would overwhelm the Cleveland Cavaliers. By the way, a matchup between LeBron's first 2 teams. So there you go. And the team LeBron should have stayed with, the Miami Heat. I still believe he should have stayed in Miami in 2014. I don't care. He should have went to Cleveland. Should not have went to Cleveland. He'd have won more championships if he stayed in Miami. I'm just telling you right now. But I would take the Heat in 6 games. 76ers and Knicks. I would take the Knicks in 6. Did not mean for that to rhyme, but that's what I think would happen. So again, I do not think Harden will be a 76er by this stage in the season, by mid-April. And I do buy the Knicks as a kind of a fringe Eastern Conference contender. I love their coaching. I love Jalen Brunson as kind of the leader, as sort of the heartbeat of that Knicks team. They've got shot blocking. They've got great rebounding, good shooting. I liked what the Knicks did this offseason in free agency. So I think they're in a spot where they're trending upwards. The Sixers are trending downwards. These are 2 organizations going in completely different directions. Embiid would keep some of these games close. Philadelphia would probably, this feels to me like a series where the Knicks would take the first 2 at the Garden. Philadelphia would play desperate, win games 3 and 4 in Philadelphia. And then the Knicks, the better team, would show up in game 5 and close them out in game 6 in Philadelphia at the Wells Fargo Center. So I would take the Knicks in 6. Again, I don't mean for that. Knicks fans, y'all are a great fan base. I don't mean for that to rhyme. I promise y'all. Now, to the Western Conference. What's first round series look like there? So I think the Pelicans I forgot to mention, I think the Thunder and Pelicans would get out of the play-in tournament. So the Clippers would be out of the playoffs when it's all said and done. So sorry, not sorry, Clippers fans. The 13 of you that there are on this planet. The Pelicans would play the Nuggets. I'd take the Nuggets to win this series quickly in a gentleman's sweep in 5 games. Simply put, I think Jokic is going to be out on a mission. He's not going to be upfront about it the way that we're used to superstars being. He's kind of this generation's Tim Duncan in terms of his temperament. Jamal Murray would have a big-time series. Again, CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram, if Zion Williamson's healthy, would get them a game in New Orleans. But again, Denver's just the better team. They're on a mission to try and win back-to-back championships. We haven't had we've had, 5 straight different champions? Was it 5? Let's see, Raptors, Lakers, Bucks, Warriors, and Nuggets. So yeah, 5 different NBA champions. The Nuggets will look to turn that tide and potentially start their own dynasty with winning a championship. So I do think they would beat the dispatch of New Orleans relatively quickly. Warriors taking on the Thunder. A rematch of the 2016 Western Conference Finals, although we're with very, very different faces in Oklahoma City. Many of the same faces, though, in Golden State. That the OG3, so to speak, with Steph, Clay, and Draymond. I think the Warriors, no surprise here, would get this series over with relatively quickly. Oklahoma City's young. They have a lot of talent. I do think they get a game in this series. Maybe potentially steal one in Golden State, like where it's a game 2. Golden State isn't really taking them that seriously, and Oklahoma City comes in and says, hey, you got to beat us this series. You got to take us seriously. Listen, the one knock on my Warriors, they've been known from time to time to maybe look past the game to a certain extent. So I would take my Warriors, though, in 5 games. Shai Gilgeous would have a big-time series. But I think that'd be, excuse me, I think that'd be an opportunity. Oklahoma City does struggle defensively for Steph to have a big-time series, so I take Warriors in 5. Lakers and Kings, I think, would be the series of the first round. Even though you see my prediction for Phoenix and Memphis, which I'll get to in just a moment. I think the Lakers Kings would be very similar to Kings Warriors last year, where it's a back-and-forth series. This matchup almost happened in 2023 in the playoffs. The Kings almost dispatched my Warriors and could have faced the Lakers, and this is about what I think the result would have been, Lakers in 6. I just simply think the Lakers have the advantage from the defensive standpoint, from a size standpoint. Sacramento is a very, very small basketball team. If Sabonis is their big, That's a little bit of a problem. And Anthony Davis and some of the other bigs in Los Angeles can kind of expose that. So I would take the Lakers to win this in 6 games, just out of experience, just in particular the defensive side of the floor. However, there'll be some shootouts this series. Sacramento make this thing interesting, but the Lakers are the better team, so I would take them in 6. And sort of my big upset there, you see the Suns Grizzlies. I'd take the Grizzlies. That doesn't make me happy to say. I don't root against Kevin Durant. He did help my team win 2 championships after all. But look, I think Memphis is in a better spot in terms of depth. Coaching, I really like Vogel. I have questions about Taylor Jenkins from a strategic standpoint, late game situations. However, I don't like the Suns team defensively. Again, the big issue for the Grizzlies last year, they had opportunities to win a couple of those games against the Lakers in 2023. Their issue was the Lakers, again, were a great defensive team, and Phoenix will not be. Whether or not, again, knock on wood for Nurkic, obviously rooting for him as well as everybody in the league as a whole to stay healthy, but Nurkic has had some serious injury problems as well as the Stars, but we're assuming the Stars are going to be who the heck's going to stop Ja Morant? Who's going to stop Desmond Bane? I mean, who's going to stop these playmakers and these scores in Memphis? I think it'd be an entertaining series where the Grizzlies would go to Phoenix and win a Game 7, potentially in decisive fashion, given the fact that Phoenix has lost back-to-back closeout games in their home floor in pretty embarrassing fashion. So I would take Memphis in the upset to win in 7 games. To the Eastern Conference second round, I would take the Celtics to beat the Knicks in 7 games. Again, I believe the Knicks are the 3rd best team out east. I think they'll finish 4th behind the Cavaliers, but I think they'd take Boston the distance. It'd be an entertaining Game 7, a very sort of old school New York, Boston type of situation there. Celtics, Knicks, but Boston's talent. Jason Tatum loves him some Game 7s. He loves him some elimination games. So I think he'd show up and show out, and would they ultimately eliminate the Knicks in a 7-game series. I'd take the Bucks to finally get revenge on the Miami Heat after last year's first-round debacle. I think Giannis, this would be his opportunity to kind of sort of show, like, hey, I really cost us at the free throw line in late-game situations against Miami. That's sort of where Miami excels in a large respect. But adding Damian Lillard has changed everything for this Bucks team in terms of a guy they can go to get his own shot consistently. Miami would make it a hard-fought series. They'd make it a little dicey. There'd be some games sort of go either way. Maybe everybody gets pissed off at like an officiating call. Whatever the case may be, this would be a very entertaining series. Last year it was a 5-game series. All of them but 2. 3 of the 5 games were like down to the wire type of games, especially games 4 and 5. I think you'd see a similar situation this season in 2024, but I will go with the Bucks to win in 6 games over the Heat. So that would set up an Eastern Conference Finals between the Boston Celtics and the Milwaukee Bucks, as we all, I think, pretty much agree is going to be the case. A lot of folks in Southern California are about to get really mad at me right now, but I don't care. Give me the Warriors in 7 games over the Lakers. This was my prediction when these two matched up in the second round in last year's playoffs. And again, what's crazy is that the Lakers were clearly the better team in that series, and Golden State, if a couple of shots go their way, a couple of possessions go their way, particularly in Game 4, they win this series. So Golden State has an actual backup point guard, an actual 6-man coming out the bench in Chris Paul. Jonathan Kuminga is going to have a big season. Klay Thompson let me tell you something about Klay Thompson. Klay is going to come this year pissed off given his playoff performance last year against the Lakers, which was well below his standard. It's a contract year for Klay. He's from Southern California, grew up there, also grew up in Oregon as well, but his dad played for the Lakers. He's going to look to show up and show out. I think it would be an entertaining 7-game series. LeBron versus Steph, part 6, I think. It would be a fantastic series, but I think Steph would ultimately show, once again, I am the best player in the series with respect to a 21 LeBron James and Anthony Davis, who simply is not ready for that stage yet. I think in recent history would show us that quite clearly. Golden State would win this series, and this whole thing about the Lakers are bigger. Well, Golden State isn't devoid of size. They have Kevon Looney. They have Dario Saric. Okay, so that's not going to be a massive problem for them. Warriors in 7 against the Los Angeles Lakers, and Nuggets in 5 over the Memphis Grizzlies. I hope this happens. I prefer the Warriors be the team that knocks Memphis out, but given how I think the playoffs will shake out, I think the Nuggets will dispatch the Grizzlies very quickly. I don't think it'll be much of a contest whatsoever. And so I think this will be a series in which the Nuggets get the best of them. So we'll have a Western Conference Finals then between the Nuggets will be right back in that situation, and the Golden State Warriors will be there to meet them this go around. Trying to get this graphic on here real quick. Hang on, folks. Trying to get this on for the Eastern Conference Finals between Boston and Milwaukee. Do we have it up here? Let's see. Okay, there it is. There it is right there. So Boston, Milwaukee, Eastern Conference Finals. There you have it right there. You got Boston, Milwaukee, you got the the Bucks who won the championship 2 seasons ago, or technically really 3 seasons ago, and this Boston Celtics who made the finals 2 seasons ago, came 2 wins shy of winning the championship. And again, I think we're going to win 60 games. This will be, listen, these last two times that these teams have, I'm sorry, 2 of the last 3 times that these teams have matched up in the playoffs, the series has went the distance. It has gone to a game 7. And once again, I think the series will go to the Boston Celtics. I keep emphasizing this, folks. The Drew Holiday trade changed everything for this basketball team. With no Holiday, if Malcolm Brogdon was the starting point guard, Derek White was the starting point guard, I might have different sort of a prediction for this series. But if Drew Holiday to match up on Damian Lillard, and then they got all kinds of bodies that they can throw at Giannis, this is going to be a series. This would be a series where the Celtics say, you know what? The others, as Shaquille O'Neal calls them, Shaquille O'Neal's on TV right now on TNT. They're the best pregame show in sports is on television right now on TNT. But Shaq would call them the others, the Bobby Portises of the world, the Chris Middletons of the world, the Brook Lopez's of the world. Boston would say, you guys beat us because we're going to put Holiday one-on-one and Dame. Dame will still play well. Dame will still do his thing, but that will be the toughest matchup Dame could possibly ask for in that series when it's all said and done. So I would take the Milwaukee Bucks to lose to the Boston Celtics. Celtics would win this in a crazy, nuts 7 games to advance to their second NBA Finals in the last 3 years. And that leaves the Western Conference Finals, my Warriors and the defending champion Nuggets. And for the 6th year in a row, the defending champion does not go back-to-back. The Nuggets go down to my Warriors in 6 games. Listen, I think Jokic will absolutely, positively abuse us down low. But what Golden State will do is what Miami tried to do and had just a little bit of success doing, certainly in spurts in Game 2 and in Game 5 of the finals last year, is make Jokic a scorer first. For the record, that's what the Warriors did when they faced the Nuggets last time with no Jamal Murray. There's no question about that, with no Michael Porter Jr. But they said, Jokic, you're at your most dangerous when you're dropping 25 and 13. We'd rather you go for 35 and 6. Like, if you're a distributor, if you're getting other guys involved, guys' confidence are building, we've got no chance to win this series. Steve Kerr is one of the smartest coaches in the NBA, is arguably the best coach in the NBA when it comes to making adjustments. I think that's what Kerr will do. And I do think my Warriors would dethrone the defending champion Nuggets in 6. So that leaves an NBA Finals, a rematch of old 2022. Warriors, Celtics. By the way, 2 of the original NBA teams. This is like not just a rematch of the 2022 Finals, but a rematch of some of those finals between Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell, in which Russell got the advantage in many times over in that series. But I don't think I really need to tease this that much. When it's all said and done, the winner of the 2024 NBA championship will be an 8th championship coming to the Bay Area. The Golden State Warriors, my Golden State Warriors, show for the 5th time in 10 seasons. No, the dynasty is not over. Yes, we are still here. Yes, Steph Curry gets a 2nd Finals MVP. He moves past Magic Johnson on the all-time list as one of the 5 greatest players in the history of the game. Am I biased? Of course. I knew this comment. I expected it. I understand that. Philip, biased at all? Certainly. No question about it. However, I look at the Warriors team I mentioned earlier. Everything that could have possibly went wrong for the Warriors, short of Steph Curry suffering a season-ending injury, went wrong. The Jordan Poole Draymond incident. Steph dealt with 2 injuries that cost him 20-plus games. Klay got off to an awful start to the season and finished very poorly. Draymond dealt with the issue with Jordan Poole. Jordan Poole was a locker room problem. Andrew Wiggins missed 2 months due to a family matter. Andrew Wiggins is now back, had a solid preseason. We know the two-way player that he's capable of being on a night-to-night basis. Kevon Looney, Iron Man, the best offensive rebounder in all of basketball. Dario Saric is in there as a stretch five guy who can play the big man position on a nightly basis. And, of course, the addition of Chris Paul changed everything for this team. The fact that they got Jordan Poole out of there was that in and of itself made Golden State better. Adding Chris Paul in his place? Are you kidding me? Now, is this the Clippers Chris Paul? Is this the Rockets Chris Paul? No, it is not. But it is a guy who can come off the bench, reduce turnovers. What has been our issue with the Warriors? What has been the Warriors' issue really for a long time? Man, they throw the ball to the other team way too much. They play a little careless sometimes. Chris Paul does not, you look at his career, that dude does not give the ball to the other team. He's going to come on the floor, steady things down. The Warriors' second unit, really historically after Kevin Durant got there, and because they had to give up a lot of depth in order to get KD, and certainly this past season, got Steph, Clay, Draymond, Looney, Wiggins. They come in, they build a 10-point lead. You're feeling good about yourselves, and when they step back on the floor, they're down 7. And the bench really, really struggled, not just to build on leads. You don't necessarily expect the bench to build on leads. Can you just maintain it? If we're up 10, can our starters come back in up 8? Like, is that too much to ask? Well, for the Warriors a year ago, it was. Chris Paul will ensure that will not happen this season. He will be, I don't know if he's going to start tonight. The word is not out by Anthony Slater or anybody within Golden State, whether or not he's going to be able to go in the starting lineup. But he is going to play, no question about it. But I think he'll be the 6th man when it's all said and done for the Warriors. So, yes, it will be an 8th title coming to Golden State. Yes, indeed. That'll be so fun, man. 8th titles to the Golden State Warriors. I will be insufferable. I'll be insufferable. But again, every year we hear about these other teams. We hear about the Lakers and we hear about the Suns and we hear about the Nuggets. I mean, Denver is the defending champion. You understand that. We hear about the Bucks. We hear about the Celtics. There's some people in NBA circles talking about the Sacramento Kings or let's do this again, the Los Angeles Clippers, and nobody's talking about those Warriors. Matter of fact, the sentiment is, this Chris Paul thing isn't going to work. I'm here to tell you it is going to be a resounding success in Golden State, who will win the 2024 NBA championship, and it is going to be an absolute blast for Carving Up Live in June. Let's see, Game 6. When is Game 6 going to be? I'm looking at my calendar right now on my computer. I'm just going to do this in live time. So Game 6 will be on June 13th of 2024. So June 14th, 2024 is going to be a fun show for Carving Up Live. Show up to the party. I'll send out the invitations out. Send the invitations out. June 14th, 2024. We're going to have a celebration on Carving Up Live, celebrating a 5th title in the last decade coming to the Golden State Warriors. You heard it here first. All right, that is all the time we have for today's special episode of Carving Up Live. I'm actually going to be, I think, we're still trying to finalize it down, knock it down, and have this set in stone ready to go. The 8 o'clock spot about an hour from now on the Grid Networks, right here on the Grid Networks YouTube channel as well, and that's on the Grid Networks Twitter account. Be sure to tune into that, and we're going to have a blast hopefully there as well, talking about all things around the NFL, Major League Baseball, and in the NBA. So we'll have a fantastic show an hour from now, so catch me, catch everybody else on the grid at that point. But NBA season starts in a half hour. I can't wait. By the way, I've got the Nuggets winning tonight over the Lakers, and I've got the Warriors winning tonight over the Phoenix Suns. NBA is back. I'm ecstatic. I'm beside myself. Hope we have a great NBA season. Here's to another great NBA season. See y'all on the 8 o'clock spot tonight. It looks like we're having an 8 o'clock spot tonight. If anything changes, we'll let you know. And certainly I'll catch y'all tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time on our regular scheduled programming of Carving It Up Live on Wednesday. Bryce's Best 10, react to the 49ers-Vikings game, all the above. World Series predictions, you know how it goes. It's going to be a very, very fun show. So, see y'all tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern, potentially 8 o'clock spot in an hour right here on the Grid Network. Listen, we're coming at you all different angles around the Grid Network and around Carving It Up Live. So here's to a great NBA season. I'll see y'all throughout this NBA season. I'll see y'all tomorrow on Carving Up Live. Stay safe out there. God bless you all. Peace out. June 14th, 2024. Be there. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.